Шановні колеги, хто підійшов, ще раз, брифінг буде відбуватися англійською мовою. Кому потрібен навушник для синхронного перекладу, можете його взяти в кінці зали. Ви нам посвідчення, ми вам навушник. Починаємо за 1 хвилину. Шановні колеги, ми будемо...
Dear colleagues, we continue our working day in Ukraine Crisis Media Center. And the topic of the next event, Ukrainian celebrities and civic activists join the UN Human Rights Campaign in Ukraine. And we are going to celebrate soon the Day of Human Rights, and Svetoslav Vakarchuk joined Gaetana Jamala Mazur, Michael Shur, Ivan Malkovich, and many other artists and civil activists. Our guests are Fiona Frazer, head of the UN Human Rights Monitoring Mission in Ukraine, Manfred Profazi, chief of the International Organization for Migration in Ukraine, and Pablo Mateu, UNHCR representative in Ukraine. Good afternoon, dear colleagues, and first the floor is given to Fiona Frazer.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. In 1948, the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights marked a milestone in the history of human rights. For the first time, it laid out fundamental human rights for all to be universally protected. Today, 68 years later, the Declaration remains as relevant as ever, both globally and in Ukraine. This year's Global Human Rights Day campaign, Stand Up for Someone's Rights Today, is based on the Declaration's fundamental proposition that each one of us, everywhere and at all times, is entitled to the full range of human rights, and that it is everyone's responsibility to demand that they be upheld. Each of us, each one of us, can make a difference. Eleanor Roosevelt once said, "Where, after all, do universal rights begin? In small places, close to home, so close and so small that they cannot be seen on any maps of the world. Unless these rights have meaning there, they have little meaning anywhere." Without concerted citizen action to uphold them close to home, we shall look in vain for progress in the larger world. Standing up for someone's rights may require courage. In times of conflict, critical opinions are sometimes discredited as unpatriotic. But not everyone needs to stand on a podium and demand change. It can be very powerful to just open your eyes and watch, to listen carefully, and then not to accept violations of the rights of others. Not to accept them as something normal or necessary for some greater goal. Human rights must not be compromised. You can approach civil society groups or form one yourself, and you could also approach international observers like us, the UN Human Rights Monitoring Mission in Ukraine, to give testimony of what you have witnessed. Documenting cases of violations makes a difference. It gives a voice to the victims. It serves to bring perpetrators to justice. And jointly with other testimonies, it can help as a basis to advocate for long-term change in society, thereby improving the human rights situation for everyone. Our suggestion is that you can start today by reading the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. On the website of the campaign of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, you will find many other ways of standing up for someone's rights in your everyday life, including through social media. As Eleanor Roosevelt put it, we need to make sure human rights have a meaning in the small places close to our home. Thank you.
Дякую, пані Фрейзер. До слова запрошується пан Манфред Профазі.
Good afternoon,
Доброго дня.
gentlemen. Let me thank you for your attention to our joint campaign. Many thanks go to the many Ukrainian celebrities, journalists, TV hosts, singers, lawyers, human rights activists and all others who are promoting and defending human rights in Ukraine through supporting this initiative or through other means. I would also like to thank my colleagues from the UN Human Rights Mission as well as from the UN High Commissioner for Refugees for co-hosting this event together with us here today. A fundamental principle of our work as IOM is to protect the rights of migrants. Being now officially the UN's migration agency, we strive to give migrants a vital voice on the international level to advocate for migrants and their rights worldwide. IOM calls for strengthening existing policies or developing new ones to protect the human rights of those who leave home to seek better opportunities or who are displaced in their own country. International migrants are vulnerable to human rights violations because they are not citizens of receiving states and often live in precarious situations. Whether migrants enter states with authorization and fulfill all administrative requirements, or they do that undocumented or have overstayed or are in an irregular administrative condition, migrants will generally find their rights diminished in comparison with the citizens of their country of residence or face additional difficulties in ensuring the respect of these rights. Migrants are often the first victims of economic crises, of violence in situations of unrest, of lack of access to protection when they are caught in crisis situations, of anti-migrant sentiments that results in exclusion, discrimination, and xenophobia, of violations of their labor rights, of impediments or limitations on their rights to access health or education systems, as well as justice and remedial measures. In its 20 years of presence here in Ukraine, IOM has assisted about 500,000 migrants, Ukrainians and foreigners alike, internally displaced persons, potential migrants, victims of traffickings, and other vulnerable groups. As a consequence today of the economic hardship that many Ukrainians are facing, more and more Ukrainians' human rights are being violated while seeking employment abroad, as we can see through the sharply and actually alarmingly increasing number of identified victims of trafficking. Those Ukrainians internally displaced are equally vulnerable to human rights violations. Therefore, upholding the human rights of migrants remain today as vital as ever, globally as well as here in Ukraine. At the same time, it's crucial that the rights of migrants who are coming and living in Ukraine are respected the same way as the rights of Ukrainian migrants abroad ought to be. I thank you very much again for your attention and thank you.
Дякую, пане Профазі. До слова запрошується пан Пабло Матео. Будь ласка.
Thank you very much.
Дякую дуже за можливість виступити на цій прес-конференції і за те, що ви слухаєте нас.
Important document as it set the basis for our two very specific mandates. UNHCR has the mandate to protect the rights of refugees and asylum seekers. This mandate, which was enshrined in the 1951 Convention, derives from Article 14 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which says that everyone has the right to seek and enjoy in other countries asylum from persecution. The second mandate of the UN Refugee Agency is with respect to stateless persons. You will be surprised how many millions around the world do not have a nationality. So that particular mandate is enshrined in two conventions. The first one in 1954 on statelessness, and that is based on Article 15 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which talks about the right to a nationality. As I mentioned, there are millions of people who still do not enjoy that basic human rights, including here in Ukraine. The breakup of the Soviet Union led to millions of people lacking a nationality. Most of them have been able to obtain one, but there are still some that are not legally recognized as citizens of, for example, Ukraine. There are countries that prevent female citizens from transmitting nationality if they marry a foreign national. So the issue of statelessness is larger than you would think, even today in the 21st century. Now, unfortunately, Ukraine has seen large internal displacement, but also a lot of Ukrainians sought asylum outside of Ukraine. So we have Ukrainian refugees in neighboring countries, but also in Western Europe. And UNHCR, together with non-governmental organizations and agencies such as IOM and the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, tries to support the asylum seekers and their refugees by making sure that their rights are respected. So for us, the International Day of Human Rights is an extremely important day to remind all of us that there are quite a lot of people whose rights are not being respected. Most asylum seekers and refugees leave their countries because of that, because their rights are not necessarily being respected. Now, the theme of this year's Human Rights Day, I think it's an extremely important one, because sometimes we tend to stand up for the rights of our own particular group. So if you, for example, belong to a certain population category, then you tend to advocate for the rights of your people, right? But I think today what we're being called to do is to stand up for somebody else's right. So I would encourage you, for example, if you're an internally displaced person, to stand up for the rights of refugees in Ukraine. If you're a disabled person, you should stand up for the rights of LGBTI in Ukraine. If you are a religious minority, which is sometimes discriminated, then you should stand up for the rights of women. And I think that's a very important act, because like I said, we tend to feel very comfortable in our own particular group, and we don't always put ourselves in the shoes of others. So I encourage all of you today and for the rest of the year to stand up for the rights of others. Thank you.
Дякую, пане Матео. Dear speakers, the next part of the press conference will be held in Ukrainian, so please take the headphones for simultaneous. Шановні колеги,
Dear colleagues, UNO started information campaign for human rights protection to realize the provisions of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. They invited celebrities, civil activists, journalists, representatives of different areas, and UNO wants to bring information that people should know their rights and protect them. Part of video materials will be presented right now. These 4 short videos will be broadcast during the next week on central TV channels of the country, and also longer video clip will be in the social media of UNOHCR and their partners. And now, please watch the video. Each person should enjoy all the rights and freedoms despite of race, color, sex, language, or religious, or any other convictions. Be tolerant. Protect human rights. Each person has the right to live, to have freedom, and you should be independent. Protect the rights of protect human rights. Each person has the right for convictions, for getting and disseminating any information through different media. Protect human rights. All people are born free and equal in their rights. Be free and protect your own rights and the rights of other people. Thank you, dear colleagues. And now we will have comments and questions from the audience, and the floor is given to Tatiana Durneva. She is civil activist and IDP. Thank you. Using this opportunity, I would like to thank everyone for this opportunity to become character of this video and to speak about human rights and the rights of IDPs. Officially, there are 1,700,000 of them in Ukraine. This is the category of people who are invisible for the majority of population, and I believe that the slogan, this message, stand up for someone's rights today, this is really important, because when we are speaking about political rights of IDPs, when we are speaking about protection of personal data of IDPs, we are speaking not only about 1,600,000, but also about 42 million of Ukrainians who do not have the possibility to protect their rights concerning their personal information. So this message is really of importance to me, because I know that not only bullet can kill, but indifference of people can kill, and our disregard to the problems of others. And when people speak quietly, their voices really should be heard. And I believe that in this way, through such simple things, such simple messages and videos, and thanks to people who are known, we can bring those values, and we should be saturated with all those values and important things. And we should understand it clearly, and I believe that my children now study the human rights, and they can say that, "Mother, this is not like this. This is a violation," they can say. And I was brought up without the knowledge of these rights, and it is really great that step by step we are changing the situation. Thanks. Thank you really a lot. Tatiana, do you have questions to our speakers? The question will be, Kiev TV channel, Любовь Мачалова, question to Fiona. What are the rights that are the most violated here in Ukraine? Maybe you can state what is the rights that are violated the most in Ukraine, and what measures are carried out by your mission in order to protect human rights in Ukraine?
Thank you very much for the question. As the Human Rights Monitoring Mission, we've been here now for over 2.5 years. We came here to look at the invitation of the government, to look at issues of accountability relating to the revolution of dignity. I think the situation, the human rights situation in Ukraine has become far more complicated because of the armed conflicts that's going on in the east. So many of the systemic human rights concerns that were there before, that the government requested support in trying to address, became more acute because of the conflict. So there are a range of issues that affect individuals, but of course, while you have an armed conflict, one of the main issues is the fact that there's loss of life going on for individuals, loss of homes. We've heard that people are made to go into displacement. There's problems with access to quality services and so on. This is, unfortunately, often what happens in an armed conflict. It's not just an issue that is taking place here in Ukraine. I think it's also complicated here by the fact that there's an economic downturn going on in the country, which obviously has a broader impact on the way that people are able to access, again, good quality public services and so forth. We very much welcome the reform process that is being embarked on. I think it's extremely important, for example, the constitutional amendment that came in recently, particularly with regard to judicial reform. At the end of the day, accountability is going to be absolutely essential for ensuring that there is justice for victims, perpetrators are held to account, and that will play a key role in the long-term development, prosperity, and peace for Ukraine. Just a couple of words on what we do as the UN Human Rights Monitoring Mission. We monitor, interview, witness and victims of violations of international human rights and international humanitarian law. We document, we analyze, and we issue public reports. One of them we just issued yesterday, so I would encourage you to go back and look at much of what you will be able to find many of our findings and recommendations there. Thank you.
Дякую вам. Чи є ще запитання?
Thank you. Do you have other questions or comments, please? One more question. No, there is no.
At this point, the press conference is closed. Thank you for coming and looking forward to seeing you here in the nearest future. Good luck. Шановні колеги, наступна подія о 14:30.